Good evening. We often think that staying silent is the safest choice. We convince ourselves that if we don't say anything, we can't do any harm. But silence is never neutral. It's never just an absence of words. It's an action in itself. It has an impact, whether we realize it or not. And more often than not, that impact is far greater than we assume. Think about the moments when someone needed you to speak up. Maybe a friend was struggling and you noticed, but said nothing. Maybe you saw something unfair happening at work, but you convinced yourself it wasn't your business. Maybe a family member was hurting, but you didn't want to bring it up because you were afraid of making things worse. In each of these cases, silence didn't just avoid conflict. It left a wound that someone else had to carry alone. Silence, in moments that matter, is a choice. It's a decision to let something continue as it is. And often, that decision benefits no one but ourselves. It protects us from discomfort, from confrontation, from the weight of responsibility. But what does it do for the people who need us? What does it do for those who are waiting for someone, anyone, to step up and say something? If we truly want to make a difference, we need to understand that our words, or the absence of them, shape the world around us. The workplace culture we tolerate, the friendships we maintain, the family dynamics we allow to persist, all of these things are influenced by what we do and don't say. The truth is, silence can be just as harmful as words spoken with bad intent, because when we stay silent in the face of injustice, in the presence of someone's pain, or in the moments where truth is needed, we allow damage to continue. We send a message that what's happening is okay. We give permission for the status quo to remain, even if that status quo is hurting someone. History has shown us this time and time again. The greatest atrocities, the biggest injustices, the most painful experiences in human history didn't happen simply because bad people existed. They happened because too many good people said nothing. Because too many people assumed that their voice wouldn't make a difference. Because too many people believed that silence was the safest path. But what if, instead of assuming our voice doesn't matter, we assumed it does? What if, instead of hesitating, we leaned in? What if, instead of staying silent, we asked the question, offered the support, challenged the wrong? Speaking up doesn't always mean being loud. It doesn't mean being aggressive. It simply means refusing to let fear dictate our choices. It means choosing courage over comfort, truth over ease, and people over our own convenience. If we understand that silence is never neutral, that it always has an impact, then we can start using our voices in ways that truly matter. We can start making a difference in the lives of the people around us, and most importantly, we can ensure that no one is left carrying a burden alone when all they needed was for someone to simply speak up. When we choose to remain silent, we are not just avoiding confrontation. We are making a decision that can deeply impact those around us. Silence can be just as powerful as words, but unlike words, it often carries an ambiguity that leaves people feeling uncertain, unsupported, and even betrayed. When someone is struggling, whether emotionally, professionally, or personally, and we fail to acknowledge their pain, we inadvertently contribute to their suffering. Imagine a workplace scenario where an employee is being treated unfairly. Maybe they are being overlooked for promotions, spoken down to in meetings, or burdened with responsibilities far beyond their role without recognition. Their colleagues see what's happening, but no one speaks up. Maybe they think it's not their place. Maybe they don't want to be the one to challenge authority. Maybe they assume someone else will step in, but no one does. And in that silence, the person experiencing the unfairness feels more and more isolated, as though their struggles are invisible. Their confidence erodes, their sense of worth diminishes, and their potential is stifled, not because of direct harm, but because of silent bystanders who chose not to intervene. Silence can also be damaging in personal relationships. Think about the times you've needed reassurance, validation, or encouragement from a friend, partner, or family member, but were met with silence instead. Maybe you opened up about something deeply personal, only to receive no real response. That silence may not have been meant to harm, but it still hurt. It left you feeling alone in your experience, questioning whether your feelings mattered. The absence of words can create distance, making relationships feel cold and disconnected. Even in broader societal issues, silence can perpetuate harm. Social injustices thrive when good people choose to stay quiet. History has proven time and time again that injustice continues when those who witness it refuse to acknowledge it. When we don't speak up about discrimination, inequality, or wrongdoing, we are, in a way, allowing it to persist. We are giving it space to grow unchecked. Silence, in these cases, is not a passive act. It is an active choice that enables harm to continue. So why do we stay silent? More often than not, it's because we are afraid. Afraid of conflict, afraid of saying the wrong thing, afraid of stepping outside our comfort zones. But fear should never be the reason we hold back when our words could make a difference. The truth is, no great change, whether personal or societal, has ever come from silence. Every breakthrough, every moment of growth, every shift in the way we think and live has come from those who chose to speak when it would have been easier to stay quiet. If we want to be the kind of people who uplift others, who build strong relationships, and who contribute to positive change, we must be willing to break the habit of silence. We must recognize that our voice, no matter how small it may seem, carries weight. A few words of encouragement, a statement of support, a call for fairness, these can mean the world to someone who feels unheard. Because sometimes the greatest gift we can give is simply letting someone know they are not alone. Silence can create a void, and in that void, assumptions, misunderstandings, and resentment can take root. When people don't have clear communication, they start filling in the gaps with their own interpretations, which are often inaccurate or negative. This can happen in relationships, workplaces, friendships, and even within ourselves. The absence of words can be as damaging as the wrong words, sometimes even more so, because silence leaves too much room for uncertainty. Think about relationships, whether romantic, familial, or professional. When someone doesn't express their thoughts, emotions, or concerns, it creates distance. Imagine a scenario where a person feels unappreciated in their relationship but never voices their feelings. They assume their partner should just know how they feel. Over time, the silence builds frustration, and that frustration turns into resentment. Their partner, unaware of the growing dissatisfaction, continues as usual, not realizing that the silence is slowly eroding the relationship. Then, one day, the resentment boils over, and what could have been addressed through open dialogue early on becomes an explosive confrontation, or worse, a permanent disconnect. The same happens in professional settings. Employees who don't speak up when they feel undervalued or overworked often end up disengaged and demotivated. Leaders who don't communicate clearly about expectations or company direction leave their teams confused and uncertain. Co-workers who witness unethical behavior but say nothing allow toxicity to spread. In every case, silence is not neutral. It actively shapes the environment in a negative way. Beyond interpersonal relationships, silence can be harmful on a personal level too. When people stay silent about their struggles, whether it's mental health issues, fears, or personal challenges, they risk feeling isolated. Society often teaches us to keep our problems to ourselves, to stay strong. But strength doesn't come from suffering in silence. It comes from acknowledging challenges, seeking support, and working through them. When someone keeps their pain bottled up, they may appear fine on the outside, but inside, the weight of unspoken struggles grows heavier. This is why so many people break down unexpectedly, because their silence has masked their pain for so long that when it finally surfaces, it feels overwhelming. Even on a larger scale, silence plays a role in shaping cultures and communities. When injustice happens and people choose to stay silent, they are indirectly allowing it to continue, whether it's discrimination, corruption, or harmful behaviors. Silence gives these issues space to grow. History has shown that real change only happens when people speak up, when they refuse to let silence be mistaken for acceptance. Movements that have changed the world were born from voices that dared to break the silence. At its core, silence is not just the absence of sound, it is the absence of action. It is a missed opportunity to connect, to clarify, to heal, and to stand up for what is right. If we want stronger relationships, healthier workplaces, and a better world, we must break the habit of staying silent when our voice is needed. It may feel uncomfortable, but growth never happens in comfort. It happens when we choose courage over silence, even when silence seems like the easier choice. Silence doesn't just affect how others perceive us, it also influences how we perceive ourselves. When we stay silent in situations where we should speak up, we slowly start to undermine our own confidence and self-worth. Every time we hold back from expressing our thoughts, our needs, or our boundaries, we reinforce the idea that our voice doesn't matter. And over time, this conditioning becomes a habit, making it even harder to break free from the cycle of silence. Think about how many moments in life require us to assert ourselves. It could be something as simple as asking for a well-deserved raise, addressing a misunderstanding, or setting boundaries with people who take advantage of our kindness. In each of these situations, silence may seem like the easier option in the moment, but it comes at a cost. When we allow fear or discomfort to dictate our actions, we give away our power. And the more we do this, the more we internalize the idea that we are not worthy of being heard. Silence also creates a disconnect between who we are and how we show up in the world. Imagine having ideas, insights, or solutions, but never voicing them because you're afraid of judgment. Eventually, you start to feel invisible, as if your contributions don't matter. This isn't because you lack value, it's because your silence is keeping others from seeing it. The truth is, no one can recognize your worth if you don't first acknowledge it yourself. And one of the strongest ways to do that is by speaking up when it matters. But speaking up isn't just about demanding to be heard, it's about aligning your actions with your values. When you choose silence in moments of injustice, you are indirectly supporting the very thing you stand against. When you don't correct someone who disrespects your boundaries, you are teaching them that it's acceptable to treat you that way. When you stay quiet about your needs, you are telling yourself that those needs are not important. Breaking the cycle of silence requires a shift in mindset. It starts with recognizing that your voice carries weight. Your thoughts, feelings, and perspectives are valid. You don't need permission to express them. You don't need to wait for the perfect moment, the perfect words, or the perfect conditions. Strength doesn't come from never making mistakes. It comes from showing up and using your voice even when it shakes. The fear of speaking up often comes from a fear of rejection or criticism. But here's the reality. No matter what you do, there will always be people who disagree with you. Staying silent won't prevent criticism. It will only ensure that your opinions and needs go unheard. The only way to truly stand in your power is to speak up anyway. To accept that not everyone will understand or agree, but to know that staying true to yourself matters more than seeking approval. Your voice is your power. The more you use it, the stronger it becomes. When you break free from silence, you step into the person you were meant to be. Someone who is confident, self-assured, and unafraid to take up space in the world. Silence has a way of creating distance, not just between people, but within ourselves. It may start as a choice, holding back words to avoid conflict, to keep the peace, or to fit in. But over time, it becomes a pattern. And that pattern doesn't just affect the way others see us, it changes how we see ourselves. When we choose silence over self-expression, we teach ourselves that our thoughts and feelings are secondary, that what we have to say is not as important as the comfort of those around us. And with every moment of unspoken truth, we begin to lose a little bit of who we are. But silence does more than just suppress our voices, it affects our relationships too. When we don't communicate openly, we leave space for misunderstanding, assumption, and doubt. Instead of clarifying a situation, we let resentment build. Instead of expressing gratitude or love, we assume people already know how we feel. Instead of speaking up when something hurts us, we bottle it up and let it fester. Over time, these unspoken words create barriers, making even the closest relationships feel distant and disconnected. Think about a time when you held back from saying something that really mattered. Maybe it was an apology you never gave, a question you never asked, or a truth you never shared. What stopped you? Was it fear? Was it pride? Was it the belief that silence would somehow make things easier? More often than not, we avoid speaking up because we're afraid of the consequences. We fear rejection, embarrassment, or the possibility of making things worse. But here's the truth. Silence doesn't fix problems, it prolongs them. The things we don't say don't disappear. They linger, growing heavier with time until they become the very things that hold us back. Choosing to speak up, even when it's uncomfortable, is an act of courage. It's a way of honoring ourselves and the people around us. It's about being honest, not just for the sake of honesty, but for the sake of connection, clarity, and growth. It's about choosing authenticity over avoidance. And most importantly, it's about recognizing that your voice, your thoughts, feelings, and experiences deserve to be heard. One of the biggest misconceptions about silence is that it protects us. That if we don't speak, we can't be judged. That if we don't express our needs, we won't be disappointed. That if we don't share our struggles, we won't be vulnerable. But in reality, silence doesn't shield us from pain. It often deepens it. The things we don't say turn into regrets, into missed opportunities, into relationships that could have been stronger if only we had spoken. Breaking free from silence doesn't mean you have to speak all the time about everything to everyone. It means choosing to speak when it matters. It means valuing yourself enough to express your truth. It means understanding that your voice is not just something you use, it's something that defines you. And the more you use it, the more powerful you become. Silence is often mistaken for strength, for self-control, for wisdom, and in some cases it can be. But when silence replaces necessary words, when it becomes a habit rather than a choice, it begins to do damage in ways that are hard to see until it's too late. Silence, when used to avoid confrontation, to suppress emotion, or to escape responsibility, doesn't just affect the person who stays quiet. It ripples outward, touching everyone around them. The things left unsaid often cause more harm than the words spoken. In honesty, think about a time when someone's silence hurt you. Maybe it was a friend who didn't defend you when you needed support. Maybe it was a partner who shut down instead of working through an issue. Maybe it was a leader who failed to address a problem that affected the people who trusted them. Silence can create a void, one that is filled with assumptions, doubts, and insecurities. When people don't hear the truth, they create their own versions of reality, and those versions are often worse than the truth itself. In relationships, silence can be a form of neglect. Not speaking when something is wrong doesn't make the issue disappear, it makes it grow in the shadows. It turns simple misunderstandings into resentment, unspoken emotions into distance, and love into something cold and unfamiliar. When people stop talking, they stop connecting. And when they stop connecting, they stop caring in the way they once did. Communication isn't just about words, it's about presence, about being there, about making sure the people in your life know where they stand with you. In leadership, silence can be a failure. A leader who refuses to speak up in difficult moments loses the trust of their team. A leader who ignores problems in the hope that they will resolve themselves is not leading at all. True leadership requires honesty, even when it's uncomfortable. It requires difficult conversations, accountability, and the ability to face problems head-on instead of hiding behind silence. People don't follow leaders who avoid reality. They follow those who acknowledge it and do something about it. Silence also has a profound impact on our own mental and emotional well-being. When we suppress our emotions, we carry them as weight inside us. Frustrations turn into stress. Sadness turns into isolation. And fear turns into inaction. The things we don't say don't disappear. They manifest in different ways. Sometimes they show up as anxiety or self-doubt. Other times they show up as anger or resentment. The longer we keep things inside, the harder it becomes to let them go. Breaking the habit of silence requires practice. It requires courage to have the conversations you've been avoiding, to express what you truly feel, and to stand up for what you believe in. It's not about speaking for the sake of speaking. It's about speaking with purpose. When you choose to use your voice, you take control of your life. You stop letting fear dictate your choices. You stop allowing misunderstandings to define your relationships. You stop holding yourself back. And in doing so, you create a life that is honest, open, and truly your own.